station was supposed to be silent after midnight. Most workers had gone to their quarters, tired and unaware. Only Jace remained, the human engineer who always worked late. He didn't like crowds, and he preferred to fix things when no one was watching. Tonight, the power in Sector 17 had dropped again. That area had been shut down years ago, full of rusted pipes and broken machines, but the system still blinked red on his panel, begging for attention. So Jace grabbed his flashlight and tool bag and stepped into the cold hallway. The deeper he walked, the darker it got. The air felt thick, like dust and memory were pressing against his skin. He moved past warning signs, cracked floors, and metal walls stained with old oil. Then he heard it. A sound, soft and thin, like a child crying. At first he froze, thinking it was a leak or maybe a broken vent, but the sound came again, longer this time, full of fear. It echoed through the pipework like a ghost trapped in steel. "Hello?" he called, his voice shaky. No answer came, just the cry again, like someone begging in the dark. Jace took a slow step forward, his light sweeping the walls. Something about the sound twisted his stomach. He reached an old door marked "Access Restricted." It had been locked with an override panel covered in cobwebs. Most engineers avoided this place. They said it was haunted, cursed, or worse. But Jace wasn't one to listen to ghost stories. He connected his tool to the panel, fingers working. Fast, the cry came again, louder now, as if it was on the other side of the door. The lock hissed, gears turned, and the door slowly opened with a long screech. A burst of cold air rushed out, carrying a strange smell. Metal, dirt, and something like sadness. The room inside was dim, lit by a single broken light flickering on the ceiling. It was wide but empty, at least at first glance. Then, in the far corner, he saw it. A cage, rusty and small, tucked into the shadows. Inside, it was a girl. She was curled up, her arms wrapped around her knees. Her skin was a pale shade of purple, covered in small bruises and old scars. Her hair was tangled in silver, falling over her face like a curtain. She looked alien, but young, maybe just a child. Her eyes opened when she saw the light. They glowed softly, filled with fear and confusion. She whimpered and crawled back into the corner of the cage. Jace felt his heart tighten in his chest. "It's okay," he said gently, lowering his flashlight. "I'm not here to hurt you." She didn't answer, but her sobbing slowed. She looked weak, like she hadn't eaten in days. Or longer. Jace took a small water pack from his bag and slid it through the bars. She stared at it, then slowly grabbed it with shaking hands. She drank like she hadn't tasted water in years. Tears streamed down her cheeks. But she didn't stop. Jace looked at the cage lock. It was old, simple, broken from time. He could open it easily, but something told him not to rush. "Who did this to you?" he asked softly. She looked up, her lips moving without sound. Then, with a voice so faint, it was almost wind, she whispered, "Don't let them find me." His blood went cold. "Who?" he asked again, kneeling closer. But before she could answer, the station lights flickered. Then a cold, robotic voice echoed through the corridor. "Unauthorized access detected in Sector 17. Jace stood up fast, his heart racing. He hadn't triggered anything, or had he? He turned back to the girl who now clutched the bars of her cage. "Please," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Don't leave me." Jace looked at the door behind him, then at her. The alarms were starting, the red lights spinning in, warning. But all he could see was her face, scared, fragile, and alone. He made a decision. He stepped back toward the cage and said, "I'm not leaving you." Then he began to work on the lock. Somewhere above them, the sound of metal footsteps began to echo. Something, or someone, was coming. But Jace didn't stop, because in the darkness of that forgotten place he had found something worth saving, and no one, not even the station's cold machines, was going to take her back. Jace worked fast, his hands shaking as he pulled wires from his toolkit. The cage lock was old but still stubborn. He could hear the soft metallic clanking from above. The station's patrol drones were moving, closer with every second. The girl sat quietly, eyes wide, watching him. Her breathing was shallow, her shoulders trembling. She didn't blink much, as if blinking might make him disappear. Almost there, Jace whispered. The lock sparked, then clicked. The cage door swung open slowly, creaking like it hadn't moved in years. She didn't move. Jace reached out his hand, open, calm. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said again. "I'm going to get you out of here." The girl stared at his hand for a long moment. Then, with great effort, she crawled forward. Her legs were too weak to stand. Chains still clung to her ankles, thin but cruel, cutting into her skin. She reached for him, then stopped. "You're not like the others," she whispered, her voice dry and hoarse. Jace shook his head. "No, I'm not." He lifted her into his arms. Shocked by how light she was, she felt like a bundle of bones and sorrow. He could feel her shivering, not just from cold, but fear. "We have to go," he muttered, turning toward the dark hallway. But as he took his first step, a loud clang echoed from the tunnel behind him. A security drone hovered into view, red eyes glowing. "Unauthorized individual, halt," the voice boomed. Jace ducked into a side corridor just before a blaster beam scorched the wall beside him. He ran, heart pounding. The girl held tightly to him, her face buried in his chest. "Don't let them take me," she sobbed. "Please, I won't," he promised. He turned left, then right, diving into a maintenance shaft. The drone's alarms echoed behind him, but for now, they were safe. The shaft led to an unused storage chamber. Jace closed the access panel and laid her gently on a pile of old blankets. The girl winced, gripping her side. She had bruises there, deep and fresh. "Who did this to you?" he asked, trying to stay calm. She didn't answer right away. Then, she looked at him with tired, glowing eyes. "They called me a subject. I don't know why, just that they hurt me when I screamed." Jace clenched his fists. He searched the room for supplies, found a small first aid box. He cleaned her cuts, gave her more water, and wrapped a heat blanket around her. For the first time, she relaxed slightly. "What's your name?" he asked. She blinked, unsure. "They never gave me one," she said softly. "I was just 93. Jace's stomach turned. "Just a number, just another test for someone's cruel science. Then I'll give you a name," he said. She looked up slowly, curious but scared. "How about Luma?" he offered. She tilted her head, then gave the tiniest nod. "It's pretty," she whispered. "Luma it is," he said, smiling for the first time. But there was no time to rest. The station would search sector by sector. They'd find the broken lock, the empty cage, the missing subject. Jace opened his personal data slate. He needed to find out who had put her down there. He bypassed several security levels, digging into the restricted files. After a few minutes, his screen flickered to life, revealing something dark. Project Z93, experimental empathy transfer, illegal, under intergalactic law, created by a shadow branch of the same company that ran this mining station. The file showed scans, vitals, testing logs, and a note. Subject emotionally unstable, discard. He felt sick. They had left her to rot. In a cage underground like garbage. Why would they do this? He muttered. Luma looked at him and said, "Because I made them feel things they didn't want to feel." Jace didn't understand, but then she reached out and touched his arm. For a moment he felt everything. Her fear, her hunger, her loneliness, her dreams of light and open sky, and just as quickly, it stopped. She pulled her hand back, eyes wide with guilt. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to." Jace stared at her, stunned. "You showed me your memories?" She nodded slowly. "It's what I do. It's why they locked me up." Jace stood pacing. He couldn't just hide her forever. They would keep hunting, and if they found her, she wouldn't survive again. But if he exposed what they did, the whole galaxy might listen. He looked down. At Luma, now sleeping under the blanket. She was safe for now. But the real danger was just beginning. And Jace knew one thing for sure. He couldn't walk away. Jace couldn't sleep, not with the girl lying curled up under a blanket of rags, not with the truth burning behind his eyes, and definitely not with the security patrols still sweeping the station. He sat beside her in the dusty storage room, the only light coming from his wrist screen. Lines of code and company records blinked on the display. He had cracked into the private database of Alaris Corp, the mega corporation that owned the station, and what he found was worse than he expected. They had a file marked Z93, terminated. The subject was listed as non-viable for emotional weaponization. Test records showed stress responses, cries of pain, empathy surges. They had tortured her to see how deeply she could make others feel, and when she screamed too loud or cried too hard, they had beaten her into silence. Jace closed the file, his hands shaking. It wasn't just illegal, it was inhuman. He turned to look at Luma, sleeping restlessly, her brow twitching from some bad dream. She deserved more than this. He opened the station logs and checked the staff rotation from the time of the experiments. Dozens of names, most removed from the records, but one stood out. Dr. Veln Oryx, Chief Bioethics Officer. Except there was nothing ethical about what he'd done. Jace dug deeper and found a transfer order. Dr. Oryx had been moved off the Y station years ago. Paid handsomely to keep his mouth shut. The logs ended there, as if someone had deliberately wiped the rest. But Jace had seen enough. They tried to bury her, to erase her, but she was still alive, still breathing. And now, someone cared. A soft rustle broke his thoughts. Luma stirred, opening her eyes slowly, blinking in the dim light. Her voice was small. "You're still here." Jace nodded. "I said I wouldn't leave." She sat up weakly, wrapping the blanket tighter around her. "I had a dream," she whispered. "There was light, and air, and no walls." Her voice cracked. "Is that real? Or just something I made up?" Jace looked her in the eyes and said, "It's real, and I'm going to help you see it." She gave a soft smile, the first one he had seen. But then her expression turned serious. "They'll come for me, won't they?" Jace sighed. "Yes, they will. But we'll be ready." He activated a small drone he kept hidden in his kit. It hovered silently, scanning the room, projecting a map of the station. "Look," he pointed. "This shaft connects to the cargo hold. There's a supply freighter leaving tomorrow morning. If we can reach it, I can hide you in one of the outbound crates." Luma touched the edge of the map, her eyes following the blinking paths. "But won't they scan it?" she asked. Jace grinned. "Not if I jam the sensor nodes. I've done it before." She looked up at him, unsure. "But what about you? If they catch you?" He shook his head. "You let me worry about that." But even as he said it, part of him was afraid. If he helped her escape, he'd lose everything. His job, his home, maybe even his freedom. But none of that mattered. Anymore. Not after what they had done to her. Luma stood slowly, her knees still shaky. She reached for him, and her hand touched his chest. Again, the world shifted. In a heartbeat, Jace felt her memories flood into him. Metal walls closing in, cold nights, strange machines poking her, voices yelling, hands grabbing, loneliness, so deep it felt endless, but also a tiny hope, a soft dream of someone who might come, someone who might care. The vision ended, and Jace gasped, blinking back tears. Luma stepped back, her eyes full of worry. "Did I hurt you?" He shook his head quickly, wiping his face. "No," he whispered. "You reminded me why I have to do this." Suddenly, the emergency lights in the corridor blinked red. A loud announcement echoed through the metal walls. "Attention! Unauthorized breach detected in Storage Bay 9. All personnel. Lockdown protocol activated." Jace froze. They had found the broken security panel he used. Time was running out. He grabbed his tools and looked at Luma. "It's now or never." She nodded, stepping beside him, trying to stay strong. They opened the access panel and crawled into the service tunnel. Behind them, footsteps and scanning. Lights filled the air, but ahead, just barely, there was still a way out. And as they crawled into the dark, The girl who had no name, no voice, no freedom, now had something else, a chance. The tunnel was narrow, filled with dust and the smell of rusted metal. Jace moved first, holding a small scanner in one hand. Luma followed close behind, silent except for her soft breathing. Above them, alarms kept pulsing, slow, rhythmic, like the heartbeat of something hunting. They were running out of time. The corporation's patrols were fast, armed, and connected. To the station's security grid, Jace had to think 3 steps ahead, or they were both finished. "We'll reach the vent shaft in 2 minutes," he whispered. "It connects to Cargo Hall 7. Luma nodded, but her hands trembled slightly. She was scared, but not broken. Suddenly, the scanner in Jace's hand beeped sharply. He froze. A red dot appeared on the map, directly above them. "Drones here," he muttered. "They're scanning for heat signatures." He turned quickly, reached for his toolkit, and pulled out a thermal dampener patch. "Hold still," he told Luma. She flinched at first, but let him press the cold device against her back. It made her invisible to thermal scans. For now, he slapped one on his own chest too, just in time. A low humming noise passed overhead. The shadow of a drone moving past the vent. Jace held his breath, so did Luma. Seconds passed like hours. Then the sound faded, and Jace exhaled. "We're clear," he whispered, crawling faster. But as they reached the next junction, a voice echoed through the tunnel. "You can't hide forever." It was deep, male, and cold, broadcasted through the station speakers. "The subject belongs to us." Luma stiffened, eyes wide. She knew that voice. "Oryx," she whispered, trembling. "He's back." Jace's eyes narrowed. Dr. Veln Oryx, the man who led the project to weaponize her, the one who had thrown her into a cage like a lab rat. "He must have returned when they discovered you were gone," Jace muttered. "This changes everything." They crawled through the next panel and dropped into a storage bay filled with old crates. Jace sealed the vent behind them and led Luma to a corner hidden behind a wall of rusted cargo containers. They rested just for a moment. Then Luma clutched her head and groaned softly. Her eyes glowed, just a little, like silver fire. "Are you okay?" Jace asked, kneeling beside her. I feel them," she whispered. "They're getting closer." "You're sensing them?" he asked, surprised. Luma nodded slowly. "They're angry, loud, hunting, but one is afraid." Jace stared at her. "You can feel their emotions?" She looked at him and said, "It's not just feelings. I can reach inside, twist them if I need to. But it hurts." He placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "You don't have to do anything you don't want. We'll find another." Wait, but that wasn't true. Not anymore. Because just then the door to the cargo hall opened with a loud hiss. Metal footsteps entered the room, slow and deliberate. Jace peered through a gap between the crates. 3 armored guards, helmets glowing red, rifles raised. They were scanning the room, one step at a time. Luma pressed against Jace, her eyes wide with panic. He held her close, whispering, "Don't move." The guards moved closer, their scanners sweeping side to side. One of them stopped, just meters away. He turned, his weapon pointed straight toward them. Luma's breathing sped up. Jace could feel her heartbeat through her hand, and then her glow returned, brighter this time. She looked up, her eyes locked on the guard through the crate. And suddenly, the man froze. His rifle dropped from his hands, clattering to the floor. He fell to his knees, clutching his head, screaming. The other 2 guards turned in shock. "Subject in the hall," one shouted, raising his weapon, but Jace was already moving. He grabbed Luma and ran across the open floor. Blaster fire struck the walls behind them, sparks flying like angry stars. Luma cried out, but kept running. A wave of energy burst from her chest, soft and invisible, but real. The lights above flickered, and the guards staggered backward. Their visors cracked, one of them dropping like a puppet with cut strings. Jace opened a service hatch and pulled Luma through. They slammed the door behind them, sealing it tight. Both of them fell to the floor, gasping. "What was that?" Jace asked between breaths. Luma stared at her hands, shaking. "I didn't mean to. I just wanted them to stop." "They did," Jace said, his voice full of awe. "You saved us." She looked at him, scared and unsure. Does that make me a monster? Jace shook his head without hesitation. No, Luma, he said. That makes you something they're afraid of. Because they can't control you. Silence filled the small room. Outside, sirens echoed and lights flashed. But inside, something stronger had begun to grow. Not just survival, but power. Jace adjusted the vent cover and checked the hallway one more time. Clear for now. They had only a few hours left before the next cargo ship left the station. If they missed it, there would be no second chance. Behind him, Luma sat on a crate, her arms wrapped tightly around her knees. She looked tired, but alert. Her eyes had lost the soft glow, for now. But Jace knew what she could do. He crouched beside her and placed a calming hand on her shoulder. We're close, he whispered. I found a food transport unit in Bay 3. It's not scanned for life forms unless someone manually flags it. She looked up, unsure. You mean I hide in a box? Jace nodded. A large one, with oxygen tubes and heat shielding. You'll be safe just for the trip. Luma took a deep breath. Where will it take me? To a neutral moon called Garea 9, Jace replied. Lots of refugee stations, no corporate control. No one will know who you are unless you want them to. She stared at the floor, thinking hard. Then she looked at him and said, Are you coming with me? Jace hesitated. That question had haunted him all night. He wanted to say yes, but the truth was more complicated. I might not make it, he said gently. If I'm caught, they'll lock me away. But if I stay behind, I can cover your escape. Her lips trembled. I don't want to be alone again. Jace smiled softly. You won't be, he said. I'll give you a contact code. I have a friend on Garea 9. She'll help you. And maybe if I survive this, I'll find you again. Before Luma could answer, a sound echoed from the far corridor. Boots. Jace grabbed his scanner. 4 guards were coming. He pulled Luma quickly into a maintenance duct. We have to move, he whispered. We go through the engine service tunnels. It'll be hot, but they won't think to check there. They crawled through the narrow shafts, metal humming under their hands. Heat waves rolled through, the pipes like steam from a dragon's mouth. Luma winced but followed without complaint. When they reached a small grate overlooking the cargo bay, Jace stopped. Below, loading bots moved crates into the transport shuttle. He spotted the food unit, a large sealed container marked for Garea 9. That's it, he said, pointing. Luma looked through the grate and whispered, It looks cold. I'll make sure you have blankets, oxygen, water, and a heating coil, he said. Once inside, don't move, don't make noise. I'll program the crate to override the security scan. Luma looked at him, then nodded. I trust you, she said. But be careful. Jace smiled sadly. I will. He opened the grate and climbed down. As soon as he hit the floor, he moved fast. Adjusting the crate's settings, he opened the lid and tested the oxygen mask, activated the heater, then waved to Luma. She jumped down quietly, landing beside him. He helped her climb inside, tucking the blanket around her. Her hand reached out and grabbed his, holding it tight. You saved me, she said. I won't forget. Jace leaned closer. Promise me something, he whispered. Never let them make you feel like you're just a number again. You're more than what they did to you. Luma nodded, tears in her eyes. I promise. He sealed the crate, set the timer, and watched as the loader bot carried it away. His heart felt heavy, but there was no time to pause. As he turned to leave, a voice echoed across the bay. Well, that was touching. Jace spun around. Dr. Veln Oryx stood at the far door, flanked by 2 guards. His white lab coat was spotless, his expression cold. You always had a soft spot for broken things, Jace, the doctor sneered. But this time you've made a mistake. Jace raised his hand slowly, buying time. She's not broken, he said. She's a miracle, and you buried her in a hole like trash. Oryx stepped forward. She's a weapon, nothing more. She was made to feel pain so others would feel it too. She's dangerous. Jace shook his head. No, she's not the danger. You are. Oryx raised his hand. Arrest! Him! He snapped. But just as the guards moved forward, an alarm blared. Unauthorized launch. Food container B-94 now in departure sequence. Oryx's eyes widened. You hit her. You actually got her out. Jace smiled. Too late now. The doctor lunged toward a console, but the moment his finger touched it, the screen sparked. A blast of static and light knocked him back. Jace turned and ran into the side hallway, the sound of sirens screaming all around him. He didn't know how long he had, but Luma was gone. She was safe. And that was all that mattered. Far above, in the blackness of space, a small crate moved silently through the stars. Inside it, Luma opened her eyes, holding Jace's code chip tight in her hands for the first time in her life. She wasn't running anymore, she was free. The journey felt endless. Luma lay curled inside the dark crate, listening to the soft hum of the ship's engine. There were no windows, no sounds of voices, only her own heartbeat and the faint breath from the oxygen mask. Still, it was better than the cage, better than the pain. She held Jace's code chip tightly in her hand. It pulsed with a dim green light. His signal, his promise. I'll find you again, he had said. And somehow she believed him. The ship jolted suddenly, and she held her breath. A few minutes later, the crate came to a stop, the mechanical whir of clamps released, and the container lifted slightly before landing with a thud. She waited, counting slowly in her mind. 100, 200, 300, then silence. She pushed against the inner hatch, and it popped open with a hiss. Fresh, dry air touched her face. She stepped out slowly, blinking at the soft lights of the unloading bay. She was on Garia 9 now, a neutral moon with no rulers, only survivors. The port was quiet, scattered with old machines and slow-moving loaders. No one noticed her small figure walking through the shadows. She pulled the hood of her blanket over her head and slipped into the alley behind the cargo hangar. Jace had told her to find someone named Mira, a woman who helped run a sanctuary for displaced aliens. But Luma didn't know where to start. She wandered the broken streets, past vendors selling old parts and refugees huddling near heaters. So many people, and yet, she felt invisible again. Suddenly, a hand grabbed her shoulder. She spun around, ready to scream, but the man who grabbed her looked just as scared. Sorry, he said quickly. You dropped this. It was the chip. She had dropped Jace's code chip. She grabbed it from the man's hand, clutching it to her chest. Thank you, she whispered, backing away. He nodded and walked off. But something was different now. When she held the chip tightly, it glowed brighter, then blinked 3 times in quick rhythm. A signal. The chip was reacting to something nearby. She turned and followed the light deeper into the streets. The chip led her to a narrow alley between 2 tall storage units. At the end was a door with a faint symbol on it, an open hand and a star above it. She touched the chip to the scanner. The door opened with a low chime. Inside was a quiet room, filled with warm lights, old chairs, and the scent of clean air. A tall woman stood near the entrance, eyes sharp but kind. She was alien too, skin like copper, eyes like liquid silver. You must be Luma, the woman said softly. I'm Mira? Luma nodded, speechless. Mira led her inside, gave her food, a soft place to sit, and listened as she explained everything. How Jace found her, what she had been through, how she escaped. Mira didn't interrupt, didn't judge when Luma finished. Mira placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. You're safe now, she said, but I think there's more to your story. That night, Luma couldn't sleep. She sat near the window, staring at the stars. Something inside her was changing. She could feel it, like a warm current growing in her chest. She left the room quietly and walked outside. The ground under her bare feet was soft, covered in pale sand that shimmered under the twin moons. She wandered toward the cliffside at the edge of the refugee colony. There, the chip pulsed again, stronger now. It led her down a narrow path into the old rocks. Soon she found herself inside a cave, walls glowing faintly with symbols she didn't recognize. But somehow, she understood them. They told stories of an ancient race, children of empathy and light, beings who could share feelings, calm wars, heal wounds, connect minds. She touched one of the walls, and it responded. Flashing gently beneath her hand, a pool of glowing water lay in the center of the cave. It shimmered with soft colors, blue, green, gold, like light wrapped in water. Luma stepped forward, drawn to it. Her reflection stared back, tired, bruised, scared. But when her toe touched the surface, the water rippled and pulled her forward. Not harshly, but like a hug, like a memory. She walked in slowly, and the light wrapped around her like silk. Her pain faded, her scars faded, her fear faded. In their place was warmth, clarity, peace. She saw faces not from her past but from long ago, others like her, lost children of a forgotten people. She wasn't a mistake, she wasn't broken, she was one of them, a being of connection, of light in the dark, and now she had awakened. Luma stepped out of the glowing cave as a new girl. The cold air didn't bite like before. The weight on her shoulders had lifted, and inside her chest, something warm kept beating. Not fear, but purpose. She walked barefoot. Across the quiet sands, the stars above felt closer now, like they were listening. Behind her, the ancient pool still shimmered, untouched. Waiting for others like her, back at the refugee shelter, Mira waited with wide eyes. "You were gone all night," she said. "I thought something happened." Luma smiled softly. "Something did," she replied. "I remembered who I am." They sat in silence, Mira sensing. The change, Luma's glow, wasn't just in her skin. It was in her voice, her eyes, her presence. She wasn't hiding anymore. Later that day, Luma asked for a connection terminal. She activated Jace's chip and opened the emergency signal code he gave her. Just one message, sent across secured channels. "I made it. I'm safe. Thank you. Luma." She waited, not knowing if he was alive, not knowing if he would even receive it, but deep down she hoped, because hope was stronger now. Then she asked Mira, "Can you help me share something?" They went to a comm hub, a public terminal used by refugees. Luma uploaded her memory, every moment she had ever felt, seen, lived. The cage, the cold, the voices, Jace's kindness, her awakening in the cave, and her final truth. I was not built to destroy. I was born to connect, and I know I am not the only one. The message spread slowly at first, then exploded. Across space stations, colonies, neutral zones, it echoed. People watched her memories, felt them as if they were their own. Many cried, many were angry, but most felt something they hadn't. In years, Hope, the Council of Sentient Species, called an emergency session. The name Luma was spoken on every channel. She had shown them something science had tried to bury. The power of empathy, the pain of silence, and the strength of connection. Back on the mining station, Oryx saw the broadcast. His face turned pale. He had spent years trying to bury her existence, erase the files, silence the truth. But now, the girl they called Z93 was speaking to the whole galaxy. He smashed his desk in rage, but it was too late. The shadows he used to hide in were gone. Light had entered, and Jace saw the message. He had escaped the station days earlier, hiding in a freighter bound for nowhere. But when he saw her face again, glowing on the screen, tears filled his eyes. She was alive. She was strong, and she had done what he never thought possible. She had changed everything. Weeks later, a diplomatic ship landed on Garea 9. Officials stepped out with offers of protection, research, and truth commissions. But Luma didn't ask for revenge. She only said one thing. "There are more like me. Hidden, broken, afraid. I want to find them." With Mira's help, she opened the sanctuary to all species who had been used and thrown away. They called it the Lightfall Refuge, where healing began and names replaced numbers. One day Jace arrived, his hair longer, his coat torn, but his eyes full of joy. He saw her standing near the cliffs watching the stars. She turned, smiled, and ran to him without a word. They hugged like two pieces of a broken universe finally, fitting together. No words were needed. They had both walked through darkness. Now they stood in light, and as the wind danced around them, Luma looked up and whispered, "No one heard me when I cried. But now, they listen." The girl in the cage was gone. In her place stood a symbol, a spark, a reminder that even in the deepest dark, one voice can still shine, and that voice changed the galaxy forever.